Commander Hayes stood in the observation deck of the human transport ship and looked down at The planet was not beautiful in any way he understood. It was a world of sharp angles and hard edges. Mountains rose like glass blades from the surface. Buildings spread across the landscape in geometric patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Next to him stood Dr. Cooper, the chief diplomat. She was older than, with streaks in her dark hair. She had negotiated with 200 different species before this moment, but she looked nervous now. She kept checking her tablet and adjusting her uniform. "They will not be what you expect," said without looking away from the window. "The reports say they are logical, pure logic, no emotion, no chaos." Nodded. He had read the reports too. They were one of the most advanced species in the known galaxy. They had built their civilization over 12,000 years. They had never had a war because their leadership made every decision based on cold mathematics. There was no room for anger or pride or the desire for revenge in their culture. "That makes them predictable," said. Finally turned to look at him. "Does it, or does it make them dangerous in ways we cannot understand?" The transport began its descent, felt the familiar pressure of gravity change as they dropped through the atmosphere. He had done this before on other worlds, but something about this mission felt different. They had requested human contact directly. They had not responded to any other species' attempts at communication for 500 years. But then, without warning, they sent a message across the void. They wanted to speak to humans. They wanted to understand humanity. No one knew why. The landing platform was vast and empty, could see the waiting at a distance. They were taller than humans, at least 8 feet high. Their bodies were covered in a shimmering exoskeleton that reflected the sunlight in strange patterns. They had 4 arms instead of 2. Their heads were narrow and angular. They did not have eyes like humans. Instead, they had patterns of light that moved across their faces, and this was how they saw. There were 6 standing on the platform. 5 of them wore simple garments. The 6th wore something more elaborate. The fabric seemed to shift color, moving from deep purple to silver and back again. This one stood slightly ahead of the others. This was Queen. The human delegation walked forward, was in front. Behind him came 2 security officers named David and Dr. Robert, the science specialist. They walked slowly across the platform. The wind here was cold and sharp. It carried a strange smell, like metal and electricity mixed together. Queen did not move. She watched the humans approach. Her patterns of light grew brighter as they came closer, as if her eyes were focusing on them with greater intensity. "Welcome to," she said. Her voice was strange. It sounded like it came from very far away, even though she was standing only 20 feet away. "I am Sovereign Queen. You are the humans from the world called Earth." "I am Commander Hayes," said. He kept his voice steady. "I thank you for this invitation. We are honored to be here." "Honor," repeated the word as if she did not understand it. "That is an emotional concept. We do not use such words, but I understand what you mean. You are pleased to be here." "Yes," said. One of the security officers moved slightly to his left. The movement was small, just a shift in weight, but the 2's left moved forward in response. The movement was fast, too fast for human eyes to follow clearly. The security barrier that had been standing open behind suddenly began to close. It was an automated system. They were testing the humans' response to danger. They wanted to see how humans reacted when they were threatened. Did not step back, he did not run, but as the barrier came down, the edge of it caught his left forearm. The metal was sharp, very sharp. His skin opened like paper. Blood began to flow down his arm. The barrier completed its cycle and stopped. The threat had been simulated. It was over in less than 2 seconds. Gasped. David moved toward with medical supplies, but held up his right hand. He looked at the wound on his arm. The blood was bright red. It ran from his elbow to his wrist, but the pain was manageable. The cut was not deep enough to be serious. "I am fine," he said to continue. All six had stopped moving. All of them were staring at its arm. Their light patterns had changed. The colors were darker now, more intense. Something was happening in their minds, something their expressions could not hide. Stepped forward 2 paces. Her 4 arms moved, and one of them reached towards wound. She did not touch him, but she moved close enough that he could feel the heat from her body. "You are bleeding," she said. The statement was simple, but there was something strange in her voice. Surprise, perhaps, or something else that could not name. "Yes," said, "it is a small injury, it will heal." You continue to stand. You continue to speak. You were just wounded by a barrier that your own security system triggered. Yet you do not attack us. You do not run. You do not show fear. Looked into the moving patterns of light that were the Queen's eyes. That is not how humans respond to minor injuries. We are stronger than we look. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned away. "Come. We will complete the opening ceremonies inside the palace. Your wound can be treated during the formal dinner. We have much to discuss about your species and why you were brave enough or foolish enough to come here and let us wound you in your first moments on our world." As the delegation walked toward the crystalline palace, Felt's hand on his shoulder. She squeezed it once, a warning, a reminder to be careful. Behind them watched the humans enter her palace. She could not stop looking at the blood that still dripped from his arm onto her white floor. In all her centuries of existence, she had never seen a being respond to wounding with such indifference. It did not make logical sense. Blood meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant weakness. Yet there was something about this human commander that suggested otherwise, and Queen of the did not like things that did not make logical sense. She decided in that moment that she would understand humans or she would destroy them. There was no third option. The medical chamber was clean and white. Everything in the palace was white or silver or made of clear crystal. There were no comfortable colors here. There was nothing soft. The doctor who treated its wound was a male named. He used a device that looked like a thin rod of light to seal the cut on its arm. It did not hurt. It did not itch. Within minutes, the wound was closed, though the scar remained visible. "Your healing capacity is faster than predicted," said. His voice was as strange as but different. His patterns of light were more muted, less intense. The wound would take a human 2 weeks to close completely, but the biological processes are already accelerating. Your white blood cells are moving toward the injury location at a rate 40% higher than standard. Why? "Humans survive through adaptation," Dr. Roberts said. He had insisted on being present during the medical examination. "Our bodies have learned to heal quickly because our world is dangerous. We have predators. We have diseases. We have climate that tries to kill us." Slight patterns shifted. It was the equivalent of a nod thought. "Interesting," said. "Our species evolved on a world without large predators. Our intelligence developed without the pressure of constant survival threats. We developed logic instead of instinct." The formal dinner was held in a vast chamber where the ceiling stretched up so high that could barely see it. There were long tables made of some smooth stone that reflected the light like mirrors. The food was strange. It looked like nothing had ever seen before. But when he tasted it, he found it was actually quite good. It was cold and had a metallic flavor, but it was nourishing. Sat at the head of the long table. She did not eat. Noticed that none of the actually consumed food in the traditional sense. They would place small portions of the meal into openings in the sides of their heads, and then the food would disappear. It was efficient and mechanical. The Queen watched eat. She watched him sip water from a glass. She watched him wipe his mouth with the cloth that the servants provided. Every small action seemed to fascinate her. "Tell me about human injury," said without preamble. "In our analysis of human physiology, we see that your bodies are weak compared to most advanced species. Your bones break easily. Your skin tears easily. You can be killed by extremes of temperature, yet you are aggressive as a species. You expand. You conquer. Why do you risk your fragile bodies in warfare and exploration?" Set down his fork. This was the first real conversation about humanity. He understood that his answer mattered. "We do not fight because we are strong," said. "We fight because we care about things. We protect our families. We protect our homes. We protect our ideas. We make ourselves strong enough to survive because the things we love are worth dying for." Smiled at this. Slight patterns changed color slightly, becoming more blue. "An illogical answer," said, "but not unexpected. Humans operate from emotion. This is well documented." "No," said. He leaned forward. "This is where humans are misunderstood. We are not slaves to emotion. Emotion gives us purpose. Logic tells us how to survive. Emotion tells us why survival matters. Together, they make us what we are." Stood, her forearms spread out in a gesture that might have been anger or might have been curiosity. Could not tell. "Fascinating," she said. "You have been on this world for 7 hours. You were wounded within minutes of arrival. Yet you do not demand to leave. You do not demand compensation. You continue to negotiate as if nothing happened. This does not follow the expected pattern of species behavior." "It was a small wound," said. "No," said. "It is not small, it is fundamental. You have shown us something unexpected. Most species would have used the injury as an excuse to appear weak and gain sympathy. Others would have used it as an excuse to appear dangerous and gain respect. You have done neither. You have simply continued as you were, as if you are more than your wounds." The Queen turned and walked away from the table. The other followed her immediately, as if controlled by a single mind. "Touch's arm, what just happened?" "I don't know," said, "but I don't think it was bad." That night, sat in his quarters and looked at the scar on his arm. It was still red and angry looking. Doctor had given him something to help it heal faster, but it would take days to disappear completely. He thought about what it said, about how humans seem to accept their own weakness and continue anyway. Was that true? Was that what made humans different? Over the next 3 days, the negotiations began in earnest, presented humanity's desire for peace. He explained that humans had discovered space travel only 200 years ago. They were young as a species. They wanted to learn from older civilizations. They wanted to trade and build relationships based on mutual benefit. Attended every session. She did not speak much. She mostly watched. She watched how he moved. She watched his face when he spoke about human values. She watched the way other humans reacted when was near. They trusted him completely. They would follow him into danger without question. Why? On the evening of the 3rd day, requested a private audience with. They met in a small chamber with a single window that looked out at the landscape. "I have ordered your blood to be analyzed," said without greeting. "I wanted to understand why your physiology works as it does. The results are interesting. Your body has redundant systems that most species do not possess. Your brain has regions dedicated to social bonding. Your healing mechanisms are faster than they should be. You are designed by evolution to survive injuries that would kill other species." Evolution is not design, Doctor would have said, but was not Doctor. "We survive," said simply, "because we must. Our world demanded it." "There is more," continued. She moved closer to the window. "Your species shows something that our models have never adequately predicted. You value life that is not your own. You sacrifice for others. You create bonds of loyalty that cannot be broken by logic. These traits should make you weak, but they do not. They make you stronger." Understood then that Queen was beginning to see what his species truly was, and she did not know what to do with that knowledge. "Humans are strong because we are connected," said. "A single human is fragile, but humans together are nearly impossible to break. We survive because we survive together." Slight patterns grew very bright. For the first time, saw something in her expression that looked like emotion. It was quickly hidden, but it had been there. "That," the Queen said, "is something they have never understood." The private chamber was cold and silent. Sat across from Queen, and for the first time he felt like he was not just a diplomat. He was a teacher. She wanted to understand, and he was going to teach her. My scientists have studied 5,043 species, began. In that time, I have developed a classification system. Species fall into categories based on their behavior. The predators, the builders, the traders, the conquerors. But humans do not fit neatly into any category. Your species is all of these things at once, and you are something else that we cannot name. Listened, he understood that this was important, that what was telling him was not casual conversation, it was confession. My scientists cannot predict human behavior, continued. We can predict most species with 87 to 99% accuracy, but humans, we can only predict you with 51% accuracy. That is barely better than chance. It troubles me. I am designed by my genetics to require understanding. Chaos is unacceptable to me. Humans are not chaos, said. We are complexity. There is a difference. Explain, commanded. Thought for a moment. He looked at his arm where the scar was still visible. It was fatting, but it was still there. Chaos is random, he said. You cannot predict it because there is no pattern, but humans have patterns. They are just patterns that do not follow mathematics alone. When a human sees someone suffering, we feel pain too. This makes us act. When a human cares about another human, it changes how they think and what they choose. These are patterns, but they come from emotion and connection, not from cold logic. Was silent for a long time. Her light patterns moved slowly, like they were thinking through something difficult. I have been sovereign queen for 237 years, she said finally. In all that time, my decisions have been based on what benefits thee as a species. When a council member becomes injured or weak, they are replaced. Their genetic line continues if the genetics are valuable, but the individual is irrelevant. This is logical. This is efficient. This is lonely, said. The statement seemed to strike like a physical blow. Her light patterns flared brightly. Loneliness is a weakness, she said. Or it is proof that you are designed to need connection, replied. They may not feel loneliness, but you also do not feel the joy of being truly known by another being. You do not feel the strength that comes from knowing someone would die for you and that you would die for them. That is wasteful, said. One individual sacrificing for another makes the species weaker, not stronger. Mathematically, it is always better to preserve the stronger individual. But that is not how humans think, said. A parent will die for a child. A friend will die for a friend. A soldier will die for strangers if they believe in the cause. These actions make sense if you understand that humans are not isolated units. We are part of a whole. When we sacrifice for another, we are sacrificing for ourselves because that other person is part of who we are. Moved to the window. Outside, the landscape spread out below them, all sharp angles and hard edges. I have watched you for 7 days, the queen said. You fascinate me, but more than that, you frighten me. Your species is spreading across the galaxy. You are young, but you are growing. You have already made contact with 47 other species, and every report says the same thing. Humans are difficult to predict. Humans form alliances that are not based on mutual benefit but on mutual belief. And most concerning of all, humans will take enormous risks for abstract concepts. For honor, for justice, for the protection of the weak. Is that frightening? Asked. It is terrifying, said, because it means you cannot be controlled through logic. You cannot be stopped by showing you that a course of action is inefficient. You will choose to be inefficient if it aligns with your values. You will build empires on ideals instead of resources. You will sacrifice everything for beings you have never met if you believe it is right. This makes you dangerous in ways that weapons cannot measure. Stood and walked to the window beside. He could see his ship on the landing platform below. His people were there, waiting for him to return. Is that why you asked for human contact? He asked. Because you wanted to understand if we were a threat. Yes, said, but also because I wanted to understand if what my analysis suggested was possible. I wanted to know if a species could be strong not despite caring for others, but because of it. "What is your conclusion?" asked. Turned to look at him. Her light patterns were steady now, but they were a deep blue color. It was the color of sadness, thought, or perhaps the color of realization. "My conclusion," she said slowly, "is that they have been measuring strength incorrectly for 12,000 years. We have built our civilization on the belief that logic and efficiency are the highest virtues, but logic without purpose is empty. Efficiency without meaning is hollow. You have taught me that strength comes from caring about others, and I do not know what to do with this knowledge." "You accept it," said. "You change, you become more than what you were." "Change is dangerous," said. "Yes," agreed. "But so is remaining the same when the universe shows you a better way." The Queen's light patterns flared very brightly. For just a moment, saw something in her expression that was unmistakably emotional. Fear, hope, the beginning of understanding. "I will need time," said. "Time to consider what it means to be a civilization that values connection as much as logic. Time to understand what your species truly is. But I will try. For the first time in my existence, I will try to change because I have seen that change is possible." Nodded. He understood that this was not a complete victory, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning is all that is needed for everything to transform. The message came 3 days after return to Earth. It was encrypted in code, and it took the team 8 hours to decode it. What they found made everyone in the command center go very quiet. The Horde was moving toward the outer human colonies. They were not interested in negotiation or trade. They were interested in conquest and resources. They saw humans as a young species without the power to resist them. They had decided that taking human territory was worth the military effort. Was in the operations center when Admiral presented the evidence. Was no relation to Dr. Robert, but she was equally intelligent and twice as direct. "They have the military advantage," said. She was looking at a 3-dimensional map of space where red indicators showed ship positions. "They have 14 war vessels. We have 8. Their weapons are older than ours, but they are more destructive. They do not care about collateral damage. They will simply burn human colonies and take what is left." "How many colonies are in danger?" asked Governor. He represented the civilian leadership of the human government. He was older than, with white hair and lines on his face from decades of worry. 37 colonies, said. Approximately 2 million civilians. If the attack, we estimate we can save perhaps 40% of them before the military situation becomes untenable. The room was silent. Thought about the colonists. They were people who had left Earth looking for new lives. They had built homes on distant worlds, and now they might die because they decided they were weak. "We need to ask them for help," said. Shook her head. They have no strategic interest in protecting human colonies. They gain nothing from helping us. By their logic, assisting humans against the is wasteful. It risks their military resources for no return. "Then we are finished," said. He looked older suddenly, more tired. But he was thinking about what she had said, about change, about values, about what it meant to help others even when it was inefficient. "Let me contact them," said. Looked at him. "They will refuse." "Maybe," said, "but is no longer the same queen you studied in the files. Something has changed in her. I saw it. Let me try." The message sent to them was not a military appeal. It was not a request based on mutual benefit or strategic advantage. Instead, he told the truth. He told her that humans were going to die. He told her that the humans could fight, but they were stronger. He told her that humans would accept their fate because it was the way of war. But he also told her that if they chose to help, it would prove something important. It would prove that logic and emotion could work together. It would prove that advanced civilizations could choose mercy over efficiency. The response came 40 hours later. She had called an emergency session of the council. She had presented the human situation to them. She had argued that the should intervene. The council had rejected her proposal. By a vote of 23-4, they had declared that aiding humans was not logically justified. They would remain neutral. But had made a different decision. She had removed herself from the council temporarily. She had taken command of 4 of the military vessels, and she was coming to help defend the human colonies, alone, against the will of her own government. When received this news, he felt something that he did not expect to feel. He felt that had truly changed, that the human he had taught had listened, that the alien queen had learned what it meant to care about others, even when it was foolish and illogical. The battle began near the colony world of New Hope. It was a settlement of about 200,000 people. They had been there for only 5 years. They had built schools and hospitals and homes. They had made lives for themselves in this distant place, and now they were coming to take it from them. The human fleet arrived first, 8 ships carrying soldiers and equipment. They positioned themselves between the colony and the approaching vessels. The odds were not good, but they were the best odds the humans had. Then the ships arrived. Its flagship was massive. It dwarfed the human vessels, and 3 other warships came with it. The ships moved with mechanical precision, taking up positions that would protect the human fleet and block the advance. Sent a message to his command ship. "I have come," she said simply. "This was not the logical decision, but I have learned that logic is not enough. We will fight together." The first battle lasted 6 hours. They attacked with overwhelming force. Their ships fired weapons that burned like stars, but the technology was more advanced. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable. Together, the combined fleet drove back the assault. But they did not retreat. They regrouped and attacked again and again. For 3 days the battle raged. Ships were destroyed. Soldiers died. Human and blood mixed on the vacuum of space. Stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched the battle unfold on screens that showed him the vast emptiness of space and the tiny lights of weapons firing across impossible distances. He was wounded again. A piece of shrapnel from an explosion had cut his leg, but he did not stop fighting. His people did not stop fighting, and ships did not stop fighting either. On the 4th day, the fleet finally began to retreat. They had lost 6 vessels. The human fleet had lost 3. They had lost 1, but the colony was safe. Docked her flagship at the human station. When she walked out of the airlock, she came to find immediately. He was still limping from his wound, but he stood to meet her. The alien queen looked at the scar on his forearm, the one from their first day of contact. Then she looked at the fresh bandage on his leg. Both wounds earned through struggle. Both wounds earned through choices that made no logical sense. "You have been wounded again," said. "Yes," said, "and I would be wounded again to protect what we care about." Slight patterns flared brightly. "Yes," she said, "now I understand. I understand what you have tried to teach me. Thank you, Commander Hayes. You have shown what we have been missing, and I am grateful." She extended one of her 4 arms and reached out to clasp it in the human gesture of alliance. Standing there in the station, with the wounded from the battle being carried past them to medical bays, human and united in common purpose, a new future began to take shape. The fleet regrouped at the edge of the disputed sector. Their commander, Vex, was not accustomed to defeat. They had conquered 47 species before they encountered the humans and their strange allies. Vex believed that if he pushed harder, if he attacked with more force and more brutality, the humans would break. He was wrong. Over the next month there were 12 more battles. They attacked colony after colony, but each time they found the combined fleet waiting, and each time they were forced to retreat. They lost more ships. The humans suffered losses too, but they could absorb them. More importantly, they did not stop fighting. They did not surrender. They did not break. This was something they had never encountered before. They were used to species that fought until they lost and then accepted their defeat, but humans fought because they had something worth fighting for. The humans protected their homes and their families. They fought for something new, something they were still learning the name for. Honor, perhaps, or sacrifice, or the knowledge that others depended on them. In the final battle led a strike force directly at Vex's flagship. It was a desperate action. The odds of success were very low. Many humans would die. But if they could disable the command ship, if they could take out Vex and his leadership, the fleet would fall into chaos. And in chaos, they could finish them. Knew this. He also knew that there was no guarantee his ship and crew would survive the mission. But he accepted this risk because his people had already shown him the meaning of sacrifice. His soldiers were willing to die for the mission, and he would not ask them to take risks that he was not willing to take himself. "We are going in," he told his squadron. "Some of us may not come out, but if we succeed, the threat to human space will end. If we fail, then at least we will have tried everything. Prepare to engage." The strike force was 7 ships, 7 human vessels against the largest and most powerful warship in existence. They moved through the firefight like dancers, twisting between incoming weapons fire, returning shots that found their targets. 2 ships were destroyed immediately. The crews died knowing they had bought time for their companions. Ship penetrated deeper into the formation. Another human vessel was hit and began to spiral. The crew managed to eject, but they were now drifting in the void, waiting for rescue that might never come. The remaining ships kept advancing. They had to. There was no turning back. Turning back meant abandonment. Turning back meant failure. Ship fired a volley of missiles at the flagship. Most were destroyed by point defense systems, but 3 got through. They hit the shields. The shields held, but they cracked. The next volley would find its mark. Flagship received a message from, "We are committed," he said. "The command ship is vulnerable. One more strike and it is yours." The Queen made a decision that surprised even herself. She took her personal flagship forward, moving through the combat zone at speeds that would have been suicidal for any less advanced vessel. Her ship's weapons were vastly more powerful than the human missiles. When she fired, the shields collapsed. 3 human ships had survived the final assault. 9,000 soldiers had died in the sector operations over the month of fighting, but the fleet was broken. Vex was captured. His flagship was crippled and could not jump to faster than light speed. The remaining vessels began to retreat toward their home space, no longer able to continue the assault on human colonies. The war was over. Ship limped back to the New Hope station. The medical bay was full of wounded. Human soldiers lay next to warriors, both species healing from wounds that had nearly killed them. The doctors and nurses moved between them with equal care. This was something new. This was cooperation that went deeper than alliance. This was 2 species learning to value each other's lives as much as they valued their own. Requested a meeting within the same chamber where they had first talked in private. But this time, it was on the human station, not the palace. This was a gesture. It showed that was willing to enter human space, to meet on human terms. When arrived, he found the Queen standing at the window, looking out at the space station. There were humans working together to repair the docking bays. The sight seemed to fascinate her. "Your species is remarkable," said without turning around. "In the past month, your soldiers and my warriors have fought together without the chaos that I would have predicted. There have been disagreements, yes, but no violence between our people. Instead, the disagreements were resolved through discussion and compromise. This is not behavior that my models predicted." "Humans and are learning each other," said. He came to stand beside the Queen. "We are learning that we are not so different as we first believed." "We are very different," said. "But perhaps that difference is an advantage rather than a weakness. The fought with only strength and aggression. We fought with logic and precision. Humans fought with determination and creativity. Together, we defeated an enemy that might have beaten any of us individually." Turned to look at. Her light patterns were steady and calm, a color that had learned meant contentment. I have made a choice, the Queen said. I have formally proposed to the Council that we establish a permanent alliance with humanity. The Council has agreed. They have also agreed that I will personally oversee this alliance and that I will lead cultural exchanges between our peoples. I will learn more about human values, and humans will learn about culture. Felt a wave of relief and triumph. This was more than he had hoped for. And continued, I have made a personal decision. I have decided that I will teach that strength is not only about logic and efficiency. Strength also comes from caring about others. Strength comes from sacrifice. These are things the humans taught me. These are things I will teach my people. That will be difficult, said. Change is always difficult. Yes, agreed. But I have learned from humans that difficult things are often the most worthwhile things. I have learned that growth requires risk, and I have learned that the risk is worth taking when you are helping others become more than they were. Looked down at his arm. The scar from his first wound was almost completely faded. The scar from his recent wound was still red and angry looking. It would take time to heal, but it would heal. Just like the relationship between humans and would grow and strengthen over time. I am grateful, said, that you saw potential in my species. Most would have seen weakness and prepared to destroy it. I almost did, said, but then I saw something in you that changed everything. I saw that you continued despite your wounds. I saw that you cared about others as much as you cared about yourself. I saw that you were willing to be hurt to protect what mattered. And I recognized that these things were not weaknesses. They were the deepest kind of strength. A medical alarm sounded somewhere on the station. Humans and alike responded to the sound, moving quickly to help whoever needed assistance, and watched them work together, two species united by a choice to value each other's lives. The galaxy has changed, said quietly, not because of weapons or technology, but because one human commander showed a queen what it truly means to be strong, and that queen was brave enough to change everything she believed in order to become something greater. Thought about the colonies that had been saved. He thought about the soldiers who had died to protect them. He thought about his choice to help humans even when her own people told her it was illogical. He thought about two species learning to trust each other, learning to fight together, learning to value each other as more than tactical advantages or resources. This is just the beginning, said. Yes, agreed. This is the beginning of a new era, an era where the galaxy learns that the strongest alliances are built not on force or profit, but on the willingness to sacrifice for others. And I am honored to be part of building that future with you. As night fell over the human colony and stars filled the sky above them and stood together, watching their combined people work to repair the damage of war. Somewhere out there, other species would eventually learn what humans had discovered. They would learn that strength was not about dominance. Strength was about connection. Strength was about caring enough to risk everything for those you valued. And the galaxy would never be the same.